Okay. So thank you for joining us today for the heroine's journey to creating an extraordinary life. This workshop will last for 3.5 hours. Microphones will be muted. Please ask any questions via the chat function. These will be collated and as many as possible answered during the Q&A session. Let's get the slides in the right place. Please take notes if you want or when instructed. Please keep your camera turned off if you do not want to be recorded. The recording will be shared once it has been edited. Please be patient with us for this. We will email all who have registered for the event when the recording is available with further details of where it can be viewed. Today, you will be working with a group of 7 women from different cultures and backgrounds, all NLP master practitioners, NLP coaches, and members of ANLP. They will present for you a pathway of possible steps that they identified as strengths within all of us, steps for you to bring more of the extraordinary to your lives. The structure of the workshop is displayed on screen for you. And I am now delighted to welcome Marilou Seavey to introduce herself and our guides for this workshop.
Welcome to the heroine's journey. This is a pathway that we found for creating the extraordinary in our lives, and we want that for you. This program was developed and it's presented by a group of us. We're from diverse backgrounds and ages and cultures, and we've each applied the skills of NLP to help us creating change in the direction of our lives. We each found an essential resource within, which became the connecting link that brought something alive, something extraordinary to life. So in the early days of the COVID pandemic, we collectively chose to come together to support one another and share our strengths. We knew each other from classes that I facilitated in Dubai, NLP practitioner and certified coach trainings. These women that will be joining me and you today are all part of the MindBridge team, and I've known them for years, and I've watched them grow, and I love them deeply. So we started this group under the umbrella of what we called Creating Extraordinary Lives. I'd actually come up with that idea about 20 years ago when I was beginning my journey. Well, actually, more like 40 years ago when I began my journey. But at that time, when we came together, our outcome was to coach and encourage one another as the world moved through the turbulence that COVID brought us. It didn't take long before it became really obvious that each of us had moved along the path of personal growth in ways that were remarkably similar to what Joseph Campbell described as the hero's journey. Now, you may or may not be familiar with that model, but the hero's journey simply is a monomyth that transcends cultures and lives within each one of us, whether we recognize it or not. The journey entails a significant change, a starting point that may be slow in coming or may be abrupt. It may be something we consciously choose or something that is thrust upon us. It moves into a process of growth where we encounter challenge, where we find strength to redefine our life, where we meet others who guide us and work with us in our journey. It takes us to our purpose. And through the changes, we return finally to our everyday lives with a new understanding and a new perspective of life, one that's both healing and available for ourselves and to share with others. And then the journey begins again. The concept of seeing, even in the darkest of times, that life is extraordinary is fundamental when it comes to being fully present in life. As we continued to explore what was happening for us as individuals and as a group, we grew, we healed, and we became more empowered than before. But most importantly, we became closer, discovering a deeper level of authenticity in how we related to ourselves and other women. So we created a pathway of possible steps for you to bring more of the extraordinary to your life. We call it the heroine's journey. It's our intention and our hope that some part or all of this program will make a difference in your life, to find your journey a bit easier and in some way help you find your way to see the extraordinary in every day. Each of the 7 presenters will be a guide, leaving you with a map for a portion of the journey. And as you pass through these guideposts, you'll gain not just one, but build multiple perspectives to enrich your resources for navigating your path and creating the life, the extraordinary life that's waiting for you. First, you're going to meet Claudia. I first met Claudia quite a number of years ago, and this woman is amazing. She learned the expertise of making decisions, especially the crucial ones, and she's taught me so much. And you're going to meet Fanica. Fanica learned her strength was in courage, the courage to take risks, the hard risks, the ones that we hesitate, and then eventually know they're right for us. And with each step, she moved forward, discovering her truth. And you're going to meet Danya. I remember the first time I met Danya. She was walking down the hall, this beautiful young woman that just reached my heart. Danya found that setting healthy boundaries is tied to understanding the power of words, and that words were the most important. Well, the words that were most important were the ones that she spoke to herself. And then you'll meet Nerman. Nerman didn't connect easily with me at first, but once connected, there was no letting go. She's a practicing dentist. She found healing beyond the trauma of cancer. And now, in her journey, she helps other women heal. And Gemma. Gemma came into our class bright and beautiful and powerful, but Gemma stepped away from the corporate success to bring light to the fact that wealth is an inside job, and her story is one for all of us. And then you're going to meet Bina. Bina mentors young women in Africa, throughout the world, in learning that conscious leadership comes from having found the leader who lives within. As for myself, my journey started a long time ago, and it continues as I orchestrate the inner design of my own life, discovering that the stories that live within me, the stories that live within all of us, can be rewritten. And in doing so, they bring the extraordinary into every moment of every part of our lives. So let's begin creating this journey with Claudia. Claudia, you're muted.
Hello. Hi. Looks like we had some technical issues. Let's begin then. My name is Claudia, and I used to believe that making decisions is a complicated thing. And since then, I came to understand, in the words of Kerry Russell, that sometimes it's the smallest decision that can change your life forever. And so in the next slide, I would like you to ask yourself, what is there that I know to do and I have to do, and for some reason or another, I have been holding back or kept on procrastinating or putting it on the side. Let's say something that I have been justifying or excusing for some time, something that I know I ought to do, but I'm not doing it for some reason. And while keeping that in mind, in the next slide, I would like to talk first about why I like to make decisions and when all this started for me, as far as I can remember. When this picture was taken, I had no idea what specifically I wanted in life. I was very young. I found myself here close to an airport in Bucharest, looking at the people getting ready to leave. And I could see their expressions, I could see their eagerness, and I was listening to their conversations, to the happiness that was reflected in their eyes, in their voices. And I felt an excitement. I felt something that I haven't felt before, and about an idea that was in my mind for some time, about forging my own life, about moving ahead from my wedding life, from my parents, from my country. And at the beginning it was scary, and at the same time it was exciting. And so a year later, I found myself in the airport, the same airport, and the difference was that I was getting ready to board a plane and embark on a cruise ship. So I ended up on a cruise ship. And since then, now looking in hindsight, in that moment, I came to realize that I made a decision that enabled me to embark on a journey that led me here, talking to you, being part of this conference and this group of these amazing women. And I could say that my decision might have started with my journey, might have started with that particular decision that I have made. And since then, looking at that picture, I have made numerous decisions to stay abroad. I live in Dubai, to change jobs, to take on NLP. I've met Marilou, extraordinary Marilou and Jerry, became a trainer, a coach, a motivator. Sometimes I wonder, how did that happen for me? Like, how did it all started for me? And that's why on the next slide, I would like to start talking to you about what affects your decisions and how do you come about deciding or not deciding. And so the first thing that I would like you to consider when you're struggling to make a choice or a decision, when you're thinking, is that you're maybe not aware of the fact that something that might influence your life is your parental upbringing, your parental influence. While growing up, you have continuously learned from them, or from any important father or mother figure in your life, maybe your grandparents. And since that moment, your decision-making has been influenced by them. Sometimes they made split decisions and you are modeling them, you started learning from them how to do it. Other times, maybe you kept thinking for yourself that you're fed up with making decisions fast, so you ended up doing it slower. What I would like you to consider while we're going through this presentation and through this journey is like your parents and how they made decisions might have been one of the components that enable you to learn how to make decisions. And then in the next slide, I hope I'm not too fast for you. I would like to consider how emotions are affecting your decisions. And sorry, I'll go back to the next slide. For me, the next slide was, sorry, can we go back to that? In the next point, I would like you to consider how your values, or not knowing your values or the hierarchy of your values, your internal makeup affects your decision-making. When you are hesitating and you are confused, maybe you're not aware that you do have values and you do have a hierarchy of those values. And that's why maybe you're thinking that you're just kind of making decisions, or you just want stuff, you just want things, you just want to get things in your life, change the job, or have being in a relationship. Maybe that's what you're thinking. Most people, let's say, see a car, they see a person, a house, a job, and they do not know what else they see into that particular thing. In fact, if you take a step back and you consider, no object or accomplishment in this life has an inherent value. And the only value that we project onto them is the value that we give, hence our values. So the values that you're projecting on that object or your desire or on that accomplishment are the values that are guiding you to make decisions. And so when you understand that, you have a much clearer picture of what you're trying to fulfill, because that's what we're trying to fulfill, the value or the values that we're projecting into those things. So if I'm going back to my journey, I was trying to fulfill something. I was looking for freedom. I was looking for independence financially, or whatever kind of independence I was looking for. And that's why it becomes easier to make a decision once you understand that. Another, let's take a classical example of that is when you're trying to buy a pair of shoes, where most of us women, I think, maybe even for men, So you want to buy a pair of shoes. What's important to you about buying that pair of shoes? The value that you can come up with, let's say I can come up with comfortable, high heels, looks good, professional. So I'm looking for status, I'm looking for comfort, I'm looking for appearances. And that's how I start to figure out what's important to me in making a decision about a small thing or even a major thing. And then looking at that, your values, if they are on a horizontal line, right, you would like to have them in a hierarchy. What are you willing to go without? For example, are you willing to go without comfort and have a good looking shoe? Or are you willing to go, for example, without the high heels? I might not be able to do that. Marilou can testify for it. I like my high heels. So then I know when I make a decision about buying a pair of shoes, I would like to have those high heels, and that's important to me, right? So going through that and understanding what's important to you will enable you to make easier decisions. The next point that might affect your decisions is, I would say, not enough information, right? What else can be there when you're struggling to make a decision? Maybe you don't have enough information from outside. Values are our internal makeup, are part of what's going on internally to us. And sometimes we need external influences, we need external information, we need to gather information. And we hope that we're going to do our due diligence. And so before making a decision about something, I would need to know, and most definitely I think you will need to know if you have enough information. So I'll give you an example. For example, if you want to vote in this day and age or in general, right? How can you make a decision without knowing all the things, everything that is in there? So it's like what you'll be doing is gathering information. Now, what I would like you to consider is that it's good to be careful, because this is the place where you might end up procrastinating and say to yourself, I need more information. That's one of the key things that happened to me. I was unable to make a decision to go on a ship before because I needed more information. And it doesn't matter how much information I've gathered, it still didn't feel like it's enough. I didn't realize until that airport moment that it's impossible to have all the information. It's impossible to foresee the future or want to have the future in front of me. I didn't know that in that moment. And that's why it's important to gather enough information, but don't use it as an excuse, because that will hold you back. And the last thing that I would like you to take in consideration about making a decision, you might worry about what people will think of you or what can happen if you make that decision. It's usually a quite disturbing thought that most of us go through. It can be difficult at times, and you can even get anxious. I was anxious at times, so I made decisions in my life. It's like thinking about what would my parents say, what would my spouse say, what my friends say, what would my boyfriend say, what would my boss say, what would Marilou say? I used to take Marilou in consideration in my thoughts. And what I would like you to look at is the likelihood of things to happen in your life might not be directly influenced by the people that you're taking in consideration. Yes, they might have some say, yes, there might be some consequences, but in the end and ultimately, when you make that decision, you make it for yourself and you make it to take control of your life. And it's hopefully useful for you to leave those people on the side and just focus on yourself. And keeping that in mind, understanding that you don't control what people say, you don't control what people think about you. And it doesn't really factor as much in the decision maker unless it affects them directly, unless it affects my daughter and the decisions that I make for her, or a spouse or someone close to you. Otherwise, just keep that in mind. Now, on the next slide, we will be talking about how emotions are affecting your decision making. And I'll start with, according to Herbert Simon, I'm going to quote an American Nobel laureate scientist. He said, In order to have anything like a complete theory of human rationality, we have to understand what role emotion plays in it. So emotional decision-making can affect not just the outcome of the decision, but the speed at which you make it. Anger can lead to impatience and rash decisions making. If you're excited, you might make a quick decision without considering the implications. I'm guilty of sometimes, like I'm excited and someone asks me to jump into a project, and let's say a month later, I find myself being unhappy with that project. So I'm guilty of that. And these emotions can affect your decision making. So I will take a deep breath and say, emotions are triggers of your past. Your brain is the register of all your past events and emotions. And when an event happens, your brain creates a high emotional response, and that's logged into your system. And ultimately, when something occurs in your life that it seems similar to what happened before, your brain is capable of accessing it, pulling it forward and say, I know that emotion. I know what's going on. So when you're making decision, or I'm going to attach this, when you're making a decision to the decision making, your brain will be like, oh, I've been there. I've made decisions in the past, or I've wanted to make decisions in the past, and that's what I felt, right? So the key question in relation to the emotions is, how long are you going to react when you're into that decision making? You may be anxious, you may be worried, you may be thinking about what other people are thinking, some things will spark within you, right? How long are you going to stay in that emotional response? Because if you're going to stay for an extended period of time, sooner or later, that will become your identity. I've heard many people, and I've heard even myself saying, like, I'm anxious, I'm impatient, I'm sad, I'm depressed, even about making a decision, or I'm torn, I don't know what to do, right? So with that emotion means that you're living, let's say, an emotional residue of your past, when you made past decisions that maybe went well or not well for you. Ultimately speaking, when we hold ourselves back from making decisions, we are holding ourselves back because we are reliving in one way, shape, or form the negative impact of past decisions, or maybe our inability to see further into the future. So what I'm saying is that these emotions, they shape the decisions by depth of thought. So they influence the content of our thought, right? And the emotions as well influence the depth of information, the process, the way we process related to the decision making. And so what I tend to do before making a decision, and I will go to the next slide, is I take a deep breath. That's something that I came up in my past experiences. I just take a deep breath. And I ask myself, do I feel worse? Do I feel the same? Or do I feel better? Before making that decision. And considering that, I asked you at the beginning, it's like, what's the decision that you wanted to make? What's the decision that you've been putting off and you've been procrastinating? I would like you to bring forth that decision and identify what's important to you about making that particular decision. What are the values and criteria that are supported by that decision making? And once you answer that, and those questions will be available for you on the slide as well. And once you answer that, remember a time when you made a great decision that turned out really, really well for you. Just really, really well for you. Like that decision of mine to be there in the airport. Just close your eyes and take a moment to feel how it felt then. Take a moment to just hear as much as you can what was around you. Maybe see in your mind's eye, as much as you can, what was happening when you were making that decision. And when you remember making that decision, what did you see in your mind's eye? What thoughts went through your head? Now, I'd like you to notice how that matched those feelings from step number 2. When you remember when you made that great decision. And when you do that, I would like you to just take a break, take a pause, and maybe create a trigger for yourself. One of my favorite triggers is like I've learned with Marilou, just hold things and fingers, and through time I've learned how to put my palms together and just make a trigger for myself for that decision making. And close your eyes and make a decision and connect it to the courage to take action and set your boundaries, which is on the next slide. Sorry, I went too fast. Just make a decision and connect it to the courage to take action and set your boundaries. On your next slide, I'll talk just a little bit about where I am today, so you can take a deep breath from my fast pace. I love drinking coffee and plotting ways to enable my clients to live amazing lives. I plot with these amazing women how to create extraordinary lives, help people create extraordinary life to everybody else. And I think to myself, looking back to that past event where I was, and I think to myself about decision making and where I am today, that not making a decision, it's a decision in itself. And I'll quote the great Yoda from Star Wars, if you are aware of him. Hopefully you are. There is no such thing as try. You either do it or you don't. So I'll invite you from today, just make a decision and go from there. Thank you. Now, the next guide to your journey will be Fanika. Fanika is an amazing, amazing woman that I have the pleasure to call my friend. She's a teacher, motivator, and uplifter, inspirational, and all in all, a wonderful human being. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for this amazing intro. Happy International Day, amazing ladies and gentlemen on the background, and thank you for joining us. And I will start with one of my favorite quotes that a good friend of mine recommended me the book of Brené Brown. Let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. So this quote was invitation for me to talk about how to find the courage. So, but really, when you will think of it, how are you finding the courage? Are you finding the courage, or you're actually practicing the courage, creating it? If it's like on a daily and consistent practice of walking into the fire of your fear, as I was doing, and emerging as a braver and even more courageous self. So when you think about, beneath every behavior, there is a feeling. And beneath each feeling, there is a need. And when we meet that need, rather than focus on behavior, we begin to deal with the cause, not the symptom. So if you walk with the mindset of finding courage, you carry that implicit assumption that courage is somewhere out there, outside of you, waiting to be found, right? But using this mindset keeps people, if I would say, on a treadmill of self-help, that you're constantly trying to reach something, trying to find something outside yourself. And it tends to buy into the concept of fearlessness. But in content, when you practice courage, you are actually present, you are alert, and you are embodied with yourself. So when you're looking at your life and asking yourself, where do you want to go next? And what integrity requires? And what your heart yearning is? And what fear is saying not to do? So think about that. But then you are stepping into the heart of that. Even the thought, the fear is still there. But finding the courage is something outside yourself. Practicing the courage, again, is about going within. So I know what it feels like to stand at the cliff edge of a huge life change and to desire the courage to change your life for better. I've been there before so many times. The courage to change your life is not for the faint of heart. I completely understand the swirling confusion about what to do next, that wondering if it will be worth the effort, the questioning if you can really do it. And I know what it feels like to decide to make a change and to take steps in that direction, real steps. And then when you take that steps, you realize, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Am I crazy? Will I be successful in this? And now I know what it feels like to start doing things differently and feel the responses of others. And they will judge you, trust me. And then you will start judging yourself. But then you will think about when you say that you know what you're doing, because deep down inside you are aware. And I say, I know, because mostly when I was in those places, and I will give you an example, I was living in a war zone in my early 20s. I left my home country in late 30s with 2 kids. I settled here in UAE in my late 30s, giving up from my corporate successful career to pursue my dream career. Leaving my emotional abusive husband after 18 years of being together. Deciding to be a single mom with 2 kids in Dubai. I wanted to know that I wasn't alone. I wanted to know that someone else can tell me I know what it feels like. That part was that I was looking for courage outside myself. But in the same time, I was practicing within myself. The courage to change your life starts with understanding, but to really understanding that the old way of doing things isn't working anymore. So you have to get to a place where you really own that, and that it's just not work anymore. It doesn't work to keep doing things the way you always have. So if you are in that place right now, knowing that things are not working, that is the right time to change. I salute you if you know that. Well done for you. But then I will challenge you a little bit. I will challenge you to start to confront every limiting belief system and self-conception that you have that is saying you that you can't do some things. I will challenge you to start connecting with other people who will support you as you walk through all of this. God knows how many people showed up to support my journey once I made that decision. So let me challenge you to do one little thing differently, starting with what would bring the most joy. So rather than that you will start with something that will hardest thing. So I challenge you to be consistent about your change. That is very important. The courage to change your life is not going to happen and not come in a one quick action. It's practice. You need to be ready to go, and you need to be ready to practice. The courage to change your life is cultivated one step at a time. Again, by practice. So ask yourself, what do you need to do right now? What is that specifically that you need to get rid of or take on board of to care to make that change right now? So you can take that one small, big, significant step towards moving something. If you quit pretending to not know what that thing is, you will exactly know what is that you deeply desire for your life. And now you can say it out loud to yourself. You may feel a little bit unsteady and excited. It is possible that you feel the sick to your stomach because I felt that when I knew what I wanted. But once you remember this day, remember what it feels like to acknowledge that you know what you want and you know what needs to be done. So remember what it feels like to make just one move in step in that direction. Can you go back, please, into previous slides? Thank you. Previous, not next. So the courage to change your life is showing on this slide who I was and where I was before I started my journey. One of the amazing sentences that my mentor Marilou said on one of her classes that stick to my mind so much was, your body will reveal what your mind will conceal. And as you can see from this photo, that I wasn't looking well. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. So it doesn't really matter how you lived in the past. You can always transform into something useful and impactful for the future and present that you are living in. For me, for example, it's all about learning and knowledge and using the privilege of the skills, abilities, and experience that I have to inspire other women. And if I can change only one life and inspire one soul to take the action for their life, then my purpose is complete. So in the next slide, we'll go through the way how you can discover authentic you. So by exploring our identity and values will help you to nurture the best version of yourself. And then by discovering that, then you can master the art of the way how you can prioritize yourself and having that courage. To remember who you are authentically, you must let go of what others want you to be. And we know that. So since we were little kids, people are always asking us questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? But they are never asking us, what do you want to be? That will be a much better question, right? And as you become older, question flows like, what you're going, which university you will go? What do you do for living? Why you are still single? Then when you will get married, they'll ask you, when you will have kids. When you have kids, when you're going to have a second baby, and so on and so on. So the questions are always following about society. We are conditioned by society to believe that there is right path that we need to follow to be a successful human being. And I was tired of that. So how do we reprogram ourselves from this way of society thinking? So it's very easy to create identities around the roles that we are easily taking over. So when we say that I'm a co-worker, I'm a colleague, I'm a sister, mother, I'm a manager, I'm single, I'm married, I'm divorced. So, and many other roles in our lives that we are easily taking over. But when it comes to question, if you strip away all these roles that you are playing and definitions, who are you? What's left? So ask yourself, who am I? How do I think about myself? How am I experiencing an expression of who I am? And how would others describe me? So if we move to our next slide, now when you have that better definition and answering the questions of who you are and what you think about yourself, let's look forward to the new you and what you really want or need in your life. So to be 100% authentic self, that can be amazing to discover, am I right? So once you start that journey, you will be amazingly creative. So you can stop trying to be someone that you not embrace who you truly are. But to do so, you definitely need to get to know yourself better. And your journey goes through this chapter. So people have told me that getting to know yourself and taking care of yourself can sound very selfish. But for me, if I will look at that, for me, that self is pure, positive energy. Self is worthy. Self is clear-minded. Self is healthy. People will say, oh, you are selfish because you want to take care of yourself. No, please take care of me. I want you to take care of me, because they're not selfish, right? So when you get to know yourself better, starting, let's say, today, we are very unique. And in the same time, it's a shame that the first or late, we learn what's really inside of us. And second, we never truly embrace in the way that we should have. So when you think about it, we can raise up from anything. And I know that. I packed my bags, literally 2 suitcases, and I left my husband with kids. I didn't have anything, and I raised myself. You can always think new thoughts. You can learn something new. You can create new habits. And all that matters is that you decide today and never look back. So on the next slide, when you think about what you really want or need in your life right now, and you can write down if you want, or you can just follow the slides and you can have it back after, is setting up the goals. So make the list of the things that you really want or need in your life now, 3 to 5 things. So when you make that, just I'll help you and guide you through questions. So what specifically would I like to achieve for myself? Ask yourself to set up the goal. So what would be different for me as I work on this area? What outcome would make this a success for me? And how I will know when I have achieved that goal. So this is the first part. So the next step will be your reality. I would like to choose you only one thing from all 3 to 5 things that you choose and that you think that is most achievable. And then examine that. What is your current situation? What effect does that have on you once you achieve that? So how much control do you have in that situation? What have you tried so far to achieve that? What are the main obstacles that you are facing? What resources you can call on? And then on the next slide, we will explore options. Options in terms of make 3 or 5 things that you can do about the goal that you choose. So what alternative ways can you approach to this to achieve that? What would I do if I had more resources or more control? So what would I do if I could start again? Who might be able to help me? This is a very important question. What are the benefits of each option that you have? And which would give you the best results? And the last one is the will. So your will and desire to achieve that. So which of your options you will choose to act on? So how you will commit to do that thing? How you will know that you are successfully committed to that thing? What are your next steps? When you will start taking action? What obstacles might be on the way? So what support do you need? And who else has to know your plan so can be resourceful for you? What steps you will make this week to make towards achieving your goal? So commit to do that one thing as you move forward today from here, and then do that one thing for yourself. On the next slide, this is who I am today. I am fulfilled, free, happy woman, being able to make decisions by myself, enjoying my life. And on the next slide, this is something that will be the takeaway for you. And on your next guide will be lovely Dania, who will be guiding you to discover how to create the boundaries when having the courage. Thank you so much and enjoy. We'll grab a coffee or some refreshments and we are back.
Hello, everybody. Happy International Women's Day, and thank you for being here. So first of all, a small disclaimer. I'm 7 months pregnant, and I experience breathlessness at times while talking. Okay, it's happening. So if this happens, just please excuse me. So now that's out of the way, I'd like to start by asking you to make a list of all the things that you love. Take a moment. Now tell me, how long did it take for you to name yourself? This question might have hit hard to some of you. It definitely did to me. Can you change the slide, please? I was nowhere in my list, and it never occurred to me that I also needed love for myself. It takes courage, a lot of courage, to realize and then to actually make an effort to love yourself. Today, I'm here to share a part of my journey with you. And although I had everything, a perfect married life, 2 beautiful kids, living in one of the most amazing places in the world, I realized I was fading behind a facade. From the girl who had everything in life, I realized that I was losing myself. And I broke down. And as I talk to you today, let me tell you, I've been bullied, lost loved ones, been betrayed, been down in the deepest pits of darkness, made a lot of mistakes. And I'll share with you something I haven't talked much about with a lot of people. I went through 2 miscarriages. Going through all of this made me feel like the victim. And there have been countless nights where I cried to sleep. I called myself names like loser, failure. And you know what's worst? I believe that I deserved all the bad that happened to me. And around this point in time, it was like I could either just drown in all of this or either swim back up. And I came across MindBridge trainings. Their courses helped me develop self-awareness. And I was able to look at myself critically. It took courage to embrace my faults. And instead of beating myself down for having them, to accept them and to learn a skill set to feel enabled and make an effortless change. This is a crucial part of my journey and where I am today. The NLP tools that I learned during my trainings helped me grow into the person I had once dreamed I would be. Through NLP, I learned about boundaries and establishing healthy boundaries in a healthy way. Yes, thank you. So it gave me the confidence to have difficult conversations in a way that it's a win-win for all involved. And learning about boundaries, it was a completely new concept for me. I never knew about boundaries. I didn't know that we are supposed to have some boundaries. And the way my mentor, my coach, Marilou, explained this concept to us in one of the classes, I'm going to share that with you today. Think of a cell in your body. It exists in a system, yet it has a membrane. It has a boundary. And anything that is toxic for the cell, the boundary stops it. And anything that is useful or helpful for the cell is allowed to enter. That is a porous, healthy boundary. Similarly, we also have boundaries. And these boundaries can be divided into two main categories. Boundaries with others, like physical boundaries, which involve your personal space, your comfort with touch. Emotional boundaries, which involve your emotions and energy. Your intellectual boundaries, which encompass your ideas, respecting others' ideas and beliefs. Your sexual boundaries involve your physical intimacy, and spiritual boundaries involve your beliefs, your religious beliefs, the way you want to worship and practice it, and then respecting it for others as well. The second category is boundaries within oneself. This I'll talk about in a little more detail and explain it. Next slide, please. Okay. Sorry, just a second. So before I go any further, let's go back to the question that I asked in the beginning. How long did it take for you to name yourself when you were thinking about all the things that you love? Establishing healthy boundaries starts by bringing yourself back in that list and then slowly moving up that ladder. So how can you begin to love yourself, you might wonder? Is it enough to go on a holiday, to go for massage, to rest, exercise, relax? Another major aspect of loving yourself is controlled by the things that you say. Interesting, right? How do you talk to yourself? What do you say? What words echo in your head? Think about it for a moment. We all have an internal map through which we work. Can you change the slide, please? Oh, sorry, just go back. Sorry, I think one's missing. Okay, so we all have an internal map through which we work and we express ourselves to the world. So, and we express our dreams, our emotions, our efficiency, our desires, and it is all based on the conversations that we have with ourselves. Self-talk, which is pulling you down, is definitely something to be avoided. So today, for better understanding, let's give a name to this voice. Matilda. When I became aware of the Matilda in me, my first reaction was, silence, I kill you. And of course, this didn't work. The key, I realized, was to make it a friend. Managing self-talk is a powerful tool, and to be able to recognize and shift negative self-talk into positive and constructive talk about yourself and your circumstances is unshackled. It allows you to be in much more control over how you respond to what happens within you and around you. Thanks to NLP, I found a shortcut. Instead of having a one-way conversation, where I was a good listener, a very good one, mind you, and Matilda was in charge, I decided to bring her to the table and have a conversation with her. Using the third-person perspective helped me see what she was trying to do for me. And all she wanted was to protect me. So after a nice dialogue with her, we decided to change her way of protecting me. I asked her to think of creative ways of protecting me, yet enabling me to succeed as well. Can you move to the next slide, please? So I'll share with you a few simple steps which you can also take to befriend your Matilda. Step number 1, watch the thinker. Be mindful of what you're thinking. Excuse me. Most of us are addicted to thinking because that's how we identify ourselves. Remember Descartes, I think, therefore I am. I'm sure what Descartes wanted to tell us was having the ability to think just proves that we exist, not that we go on an overdrive. So when you hear a voice in your head, saying what's going to happen next, I think I shouldn't do this. I could have done this better. Just listen to it and be impartial to it. Free yourself from your mind. A simple tip which I found very helpful comes from Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now. He has beautifully explained the concept of now. He explains that time is a delusion. He explains that time is a delusion and our mind is obsessed with this time, stuck in this time. And while we miss living in the present, our mind is trapped living in the past or in the future. Whenever you find yourself sad or depressed, follow the trail of your thoughts and you'll find that you are thinking about the past. Whenever you're feeling anxious, stressed, excited, nervous, follow the trail again and you'll find that you are thinking about your future. And in doing so, we miss the present moment. Staying in the present is difficult, but making a conscious effort will slowly help. A simple way of doing this is experiencing now. You can do it now. Take a deep breath. Pay attention to your surroundings. Listen to the different sounds around you. Smell the air. And notice your breathing. Bring your attention to yourself. So, now that everybody's here now again, next step is clarifying beliefs. What are beliefs? Beliefs are assumptions which we hold as true. They can be limiting or empowering, but they determine how we show up in the world and how we interact. For instance, one of the limiting beliefs may be, I'm not good at meeting deadlines. Now check if this belief is actually justified. Ask yourself this. Has there ever been a time in your life when you did meet a deadline? Could be a deadline outside of your office, in your personal life, or college, or way back in school. If yes, then it means it's a limiting belief and you need to rid yourself of it. If by any chance it's a belief based on your past experiences, well then, you need a calendar and some discipline. So now, once you've highlighted where your thoughts are coming from and whether there is a limiting belief hidden behind it. Become aware of how Matilda talks to you. Identify the language it's using. To be honest, mine was extremely mean. Words and phrases like stupid, not worth it, never going to happen, not good enough, why bother, too hard, they would come up. Do these words or similar come up in your head often? What kind of situations do they come up in? Is the voice a whisper, loud, shrill? Is it never ending? Once you've become aware of the mean language, help Matilda improve her vocabulary. Remember, you're the one in charge. Your aim is to be kind to yourself. If you're kind towards yourself, it will radiate outwards and encompass others too, without putting in much effort. Think about all the things you say to yourself. Would you say them to your friend? Would you use that same tone? I bet you won't. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Learn new words. Reframe your daily language. Make small replacements. One good way of doing this is while conversing with others in your day-to-day routine, make these shifts. For example, instead of using the word statements like, I'm dying to go to the concert, say, I'd love to go to the concert. Instead of saying, I'll try to do it, say, I'll do my best. Here you can see there's a language of yes, it's called Tools of Optimism. This presentation has been shared with you, so this is with all of you. Once you start making these changes in your daily language, you will notice how your mindset changes to positivity and optimism. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay. Another boundary that we need to draw within ourselves is to curb our desire for perfectionism. So what is perfectionism? When one holds oneself accountable to reaching an unattainable standard in any aspect of life. And interestingly, most often than not, that ideal standard is not even clearly defined. It is also a form of negative self-talk. A perfectionist wants everything to be perfect. Perfect? Is there anything that is actually perfect? By saying, I want everything to be perfect, I'm a perfectionist, we're limiting ourselves and closing ourselves to new experiences. It is a limiting belief system that is overwhelming and exhausting. Do you hear yourself saying, I should have, I could have, must, mustn't, a lot? Beware, that's the perfectionism trap. And this makes a case for a way of life which is self-defeating. It holds one back from being one's most productive and creative self. The irony is, when everyone wants to be their best, perfectionists, when faced with roadblocks, tend to have severe emotional outbreaks. Serena Williams is one famous personality with this issue. She has been known to break her rackets, and not just that, but her outbursts have even cost her the game at times. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not implying that you don't aim high, don't work hard, and not strive for excellence, by all means. But in this process, don't blame yourself if things don't work out, or if you feel like you've messed up. It's okay. Again, we come back to our language. To break free from the perfectionism bond, create a distance between your negative thoughts and you. Write them down on a paper. This is a way of dissociating from them. They will feel less a part of you once they're out on the paper. And then decide, how can you change these words into something positive, which would hold true for you? For example, your I can't can be broken down to I don't want to, or I don't know how to. Understanding this gives you a choice in your response. That change will bring you personal accountability. Either owning your choice or choosing to learn what you need so that you can. Then think, why are they I can't? And is there a way to change it into an I don't? For example, instead of saying, I can't wake up early in the morning, try saying, I don't want to wake up early in the morning. See the shift in perspective after this switch. Empowering, isn't it? I broke up with perfection, and it gave me a sense of freedom. I felt as if a load has come off of me. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So these are my pictures of before and after. And I'm sure the change is pretty obvious before I got into NLP and the one afterwards. So self-awareness, healthy boundaries, and self-acceptance can be liberating and refreshing. All these are building blocks to understanding one's self-worth. I'll invite your next guide, Gemma, for the journey onwards. She is one amazing woman and a very kind soul. Over to you, Gemma.
Thank you, Dania. That was an amazing presentation. I hope I can follow just as well as you've done that. That was really fantastic. Thank you for being with me this evening, ladies and gentlemen, and happy International Women's Day. If we can begin on the next slide, please. Every woman that finally figured out her worth has picked up her suitcases of pride and boarded a flight to freedom, which landed in the Valley of Change. We're deep in our journey now, and I want to talk to you about a resource that quite literally saved my life. On the next slide, I would like to say that I have been at various times in my life quite unsure of how to move forward, held back by the mask that I chose to hide behind and the stories that I have told myself. I am now a master NLP practitioner and advanced coach, and I also practice the Ericksonian model of hypnosis, all of which I've learned through Marilou and Jerry Seavey of Mindbridge. I currently run my own business, specializing in training people who work mainly in the wealth management sector. And I also use NLP to help women to redefine their self-worth, their wealth, and their wellness. So this evening, I'm going to be showing you how you can begin to redefine your self-worth and discover how true wealth comes from holding anything that you value in abundance. I'm going to tell you about my journey, from why I pursued NLP to how I discovered that I was actually hiding behind a mask that didn't hold any essence of who I was. I'm going to tell you how I had to lose everything that I thought defined who I was and start again to rebuild from ground zero with a brand new map of the world. Your key takeaways this evening will include how you can redefine your self-worth, not only through the self-awareness and boundaries that Dani has already given us, but also through vulnerability, self-compassion, and curiosity, in order to pursue the abundance that you desire. But first of all, let's move to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit about my story. This picture here is actually before NLP, and it may look like I look well and glamorous, but believe you me, there was a mask, and that mask was held so tightly to my face that I really did not show anybody the real me. I began a career in wealth management, excuse me, at 17 years old. I didn't actually go into finance because I wanted to. I left home after a few turbulent years and I needed a job. My money story, one of the many narratives that I held on to, was one that included, there's never enough. Money is really hard to come by and we would never be rich. And that you have to work really hard to get anywhere in life. So what I learned is to chase money from a really young age. And I was quite good at it. Up until a few years ago, I felt like I was defined by my career. I chased money and I strove for power. I simply wanted to prove that I wasn't a failure, that I had everything together and that my life was a choice and not simply a chain of circumstances. Now, on paper, I was a success. But honestly, in my heart, I was not happy. I'd continued to struggle to make connections with partners and seemingly found love in all the wrong places. My understanding of self-worth was that it was rooted in my career and the power that I felt when, honestly, I bossed a group of men around in a boardroom, being in a male-dominated industry such as financial services. I thought my value was my six-figure paycheck and a fancy job title. But even with my mask on, a few years ago, I was still determined to become better at what I did. So I actually signed up for an NLP practitioner and coaching course with MindBridge simply because I wanted to learn how to be better at communication. I wanted to understand how it could further enhance my management skills. And I wanted to gain more control of some of the situations that I personally struggled with as a female in financial services. Little did I know that that was actually the start of a very different journey to the one that I thought I was about to take. 6 months after completing my first course with MindBridge, I went ahead and completed the master's. And it was in one particular NLP exercise, a piece of really powerful timeline work that really slapped me in the face so hard that it made my mask wobble. It wasn't quite ready to fall off. But in 37 years of life, nothing had ever made me question whether what I was doing was rooted in fear or abundance. It was in that moment that I realized that I was operating from a place of fear, from lack. I had self-awareness for the first time about not only my fear, but also my lack of self-compassion and ultimately lack of self-worth. I felt a glimmer of permission, a tiny part of me that said there might be a different way. Feeling quite empowered from my master's course, I was ready to start thinking about my new life. And then I discovered I was pregnant. So with my mask loose and my eyes open, I began thinking about who I truly wanted to be as a mother and knew that I didn't want to continue my career, but that financial stability still felt like a worthy value to me. So while I deliberated, planned, unplanned, and replanned, the universe had different plans for me anyway. And at a routine scan, I found I'd actually miscarried. Although my body hadn't actually realized that my baby was no longer growing, so I hadn't yet lost that pregnancy. I needed surgery to remove the pregnancy, and after that, I fell into the deepest sadness that I've ever experienced. Not only had I miscarried, but my body hadn't even realized it. I felt like the biggest failure ever, and I hated that my body had betrayed me. I then discovered that happiness is not in the bottom of an empty pizza box or a wine bottle. And I did spend a good few months, confusing self-love with self-pity and trying to eat and drink my way to happiness. I called my overindulgences self-care when truly they were self-harm. But I hid behind a very well put together professional persona in my corporate job where nobody knew what I had been through. Then as I grew stronger, I remembered more and more about my training. I remembered those timelines. I remembered the resources and the beliefs and the values and that sense of identity that was around me when that mask was slightly loose. And day by day, as I thought about my purpose, who I was here to serve, what sparked joy, and where did I feel fulfilled, I realized it was not in my day job when I was dealing with management information and decisions that did not feel important. And it certainly wasn't when I finished a bottle of wine or a whole pizza. I felt happy when I helped other women work on their beliefs and their behaviors around money. I felt fulfilled when I could see that I made a difference to people and I could see them feeling successful in their personal and professional lives. So, knowing what I now had to do, I finally decided to tear off my mask. And realizing that my intrinsic worth was far more valuable than everything around me, I quit my job. After releasing myself from job titles, corporate life, and limiting beliefs that had truly dictated my behaviors for years, I found a way to feel worthy of what I truly wanted in life. I stepped into the unknown and I dealt with my rejections and failures with self-compassion. I put health on the top of my priority list and began building a business to do something that I was passionate about. So now I'm going to be sharing with you the 3 main steps it takes to redefine self-worth. Because maybe it's time that you also question your own narratives about what you've told yourself so far. Start to question, how do the beliefs of who you are, defined by the journey that you've been on so far, prevent you from taking the harder path when there's a fork in the road? So if we move on to the next slide, thank you. Step 1 is vulnerability. When you take off your mask, you're going to feel vulnerable. But let me tell you, there are 7.5 billion people on this earth. So if you can't find people to feel vulnerable in front of, you're never going to dig deep enough to find that part of you that knows that your value is not anything to do with what's on the outside. Being vulnerable will involve taking risks. And even when we don't know what the outcome is going to be, it will help us to realize our full potential. It takes courage to be vulnerable, to truly be a heroine in your own journeys. But I want you to step forward into that space. Be vulnerable, remove the mask, and be willing to take those risks that are going to bring you into the best version of yourself. Because when you decide to take off the mask and reveal who you truly are, although not everyone will accept you, the right people will. And when you can stand in the mirror and see your true self, you can understand the depth of the satisfaction of standing in the power that comes from within. My second point on the next slide is that you truly need self-compassion. Even when I was working in my corporate job, my compassion for others ran very deep. And you might find this too, that you can often be understanding and accepting of other people. The way to do this for yourself is to turn that inward. If you have the resource of compassion for other people, then you know what compassion is. And all you need to do is turn it towards yourself. Ask yourself, what can I do to give myself what I need in this moment? And how can I motivate myself with kindness, support, and understanding rather than criticism? And when your mask comes off and you become vulnerable and you really want to realize your inner worth, you're going to need kindness and support for yourself, because not everything is going to be easy. And there will be feedback that tells you you need to go down a different path. But don't criticize. Behave with yourself as you would others. And my third point is curiosity. As humans, we naturally meet other situations and circumstances with judgment, and this includes ourselves. Now, it may be difficult to eliminate this, but if you can find it within yourself to widen the lens through which you judge on the outside when you're looking at others, then again, you can turn this inwards. So the more you can widen your lens and allow yourself room to grow, the better things will be for you when it comes to accepting adversity, and the more you'll open your mind to new experiences. Because through curiosity, you can begin to look at life through an optimistic lens. Challenges are just simply feedback. They're part of your learning, they're part of your journey, rather than being a setback or a failure. You begin to see possibilities rather than obstacles or problems. And you begin to feel curious about what you need to let go of when it comes to the next steps in your journey. So for now, recognize when judgment comes up, not only of yourself, but of other people. Remember, you can learn by turning things inward, but ask yourself each time, what did I learn from this? How can I grow from here? And how can this enrich my map of the world and help me find the resource of self-worth? On the next slide, I want to tell you why it's important that you find this resource of self-worth. We've learned about making decisions, about becoming who you truly want to be, about setting boundaries. Well, your self-worth supports self-love, ambitions, goals, aspirations. It supports the need for healthy boundaries. It supports your healing and your decision-making. I still work in financial services. And the one thing that I do know is you cannot begin to build outer wealth, recognize abundance, or design the life that you want without the foundation of believing that you are worthy of all you desire, that you are valuable just as you are, and that your inner wealth cannot be measured or defined by anyone or anything. I will be providing you with some actionable steps that you can go through to increase awareness, practice vulnerability, and act with self-compassion. And of course, face your future with curiosity. These will come out to you on email or be shared in the chat with you. On the next slide, the one after that, sorry. This is my before and after. Here I am again before the mask came off at one of my events. And maybe now, when you've seen me animated, you can see that fake smile and how I was really hiding behind a person that I didn't even know, to be honest. And on the other side, I'm healthier, I'm happier. I move through life from a place of knowing that my inner worth is more important than any money, any possessions. I do believe in building wealth. I do believe in being the healthiest and best version of yourself. But the resource that you need on your journey is self-worth. I'm now going to hand you to your next guide, Dr. Nerman Kamal, who will show you how NLP has the power to help you heal. Thank you very much for listening to me, and enjoy the rest of your journey.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, everyone who was before me. Hey, everyone. Good day, as I'm not sure of your time zone. Happy International Women's Day. I am so happy to be here today with you all, and of course with my lovely ladies from Creating Extraordinary Lives. First, allow me to introduce myself. I am Nermeen. I am a life traveler, survivor, passerby, and an authentic storyteller who would love to leave an imprint in this life with everyone I meet. My journey has been full of setbacks that made me who I am today and continues pushing me to move forward, to be better in every way. Sharing my different experiences and telling stories about how my life went through and the lessons I have learned from those setbacks is my way to finding purpose in life and connecting with others at the deepest level. As you can notice from the title, the word disease was placed into syllables to be dis-ease. The word, the change of the language and the highlight of the power, as what Dania said earlier and everyone spoke about today. That changing the meaning, taking your mind to places out of its old programming to new perspectives. And the second, notice, of course, that I will be talking about my story about healing. My belief of the importance of continuous inner work to increase the well-being of my body and soul takes me further into new levels of learning and exploring help and sharing this help of all kinds to every woman I can meet. Then in the second slide, here we go with my story. Well, the power of great questions. What's real? A very interesting exercise, actually. Our mentors, Marilou and Jerry in Mindbridge, used to take us through. That exercise made me look at my mirror, check on my reality, and made my brain wonder, so what's real? What's my reality at that time? Well, in the second slide, you will see where I was as my picture in the slide, the left part of the slide actually, where I was, the complete uncertainty. When my life stopped and paused for my healing troubles I had with my cancer journey, allowed me to question everything inside out, taking me from pent-up emotions, holding on to unhealthy old programs and thoughts and making conditioning to my body, breaking up with my perfectionist within, having the decision to search for my courage to set up healthy boundaries and draw lines for my future self. With great confidence in the narrative within, written by the current Nermeen in the left side of the picture, and the right side of the slide with the new picture that made me stronger. And I had a lot of support with my troop, my lovely ladies in Creating Extraordinary Lives. So in the next slide, I will be sharing what is reality. So as any experience and information can go through deletion, distortion, generalization, then perception is what's all about it. Your perception about your experience is different than others. I had a lot of experiences with the mother and father lost from cancer, and I had strong beliefs that were limiting. That caused, at some point, as study showed, somatic symptoms on the body. So what we will learn is the three different things: experience, perception, and trauma. So what is trauma, as the next slide would show? Basically, it's any deeply distressing or disturbing experience from anything you go through every day that you cope with, and your subconscious gives you some thoughts about your way of dealing with that trauma, that distressing or disturbing experience. Well, actually, the trauma will leave you with emotions, energy left over, or for me, that some of this energy wasn't mine and was from other resources, other perception of other experiences, memories that you cannot eventually get rid of, changing moods, changes in the body, physical ability change, as I mentioned, or Marilou mentioned. I'm a practicing dentist, and dentistry is one of my deep parts that I really like. But at some point after surgery, my physical ability made me feel stuck. Of course, sleeping patterns will be changed with all the above. So in the next slide, we can share how we can have healing formula. So in the next presentation, I will be mixing, and forgive me if sometimes I'll get emotional. So my experience with the healing made me realize that we need a formula, or I needed a formula. So we will be discussing the pause analysis and how we do that using the healing wheel or the balance wheel. What are the anxiety beliefs that's related to your trauma, and especially with life-changing experiences? What are the effective communication with your body, and how you can have emotional release of energy, thoughts, and talk? And what is the conditioning versus affirmation? So let's jump into it. Using the balance wheel. This is a very nice tool most of coaches like, and our Jerry, my beloved mentor, besides, of course, Marilou, they love to use the balance wheel. The balance wheel is a wheel that you can have it divided into 4 or 8 or whatever segments you like. So what I did is, and you can have like friendship, work, love, any aspect of your life. So you and your coach at the beginning know how you can rate every segment and where to use this as a guide for working. So I used it in my stuck place where I was struggling with my healing to crack the 4 pillars of healing: the mind, body, energy, and soul. So of each part, you can have elements, as we can see in the next slide. So about the body, for example, you can divide the body area, or you can have a complete wheel for the body for itself. So the body, you can work on the strength, breathing, diet, exercise, for example. 4 examples for the body well-being. And then from the center is 0 and the top is 10. And you can grade every part of this. So for example, if the diet is 2 from 10, so 2 out of 10 is like you need to work on. And if the strength or the exercise, also 3 or 4, so you need to make it 7 or 8, so your body will be better. If you want to have it as a whole for the body, soul, mind, and energy, I would suggest, or what I did in that time, is to relate it together. So for example, I would say body with exercise, soul with gratitude, mind with meditation, and energy, for example, yoga. And grade every piece from 0 to 10, working to make them improving day by day. So these elements, as were very, very helpful for me, it was very helpful as a tool for other ladies who I shared with their journey during cancer survivor and management. And the next slide will talk about the effective communication. So having effective communication with your body bring you to an emotional release of anxiety beliefs. So limiting beliefs can be combined, accompanied with limiting feelings. So as I said, and I will have an example for this, I was thinking that I deserve what I had as an experience because that was a part of my old programming because of ABC. So that limiting belief made me having a lot of anger, victimization, pain, and uncomfortable feeling because I owned the feeling. And that limiting belief made me feel a lot of bad emotions that blocked me from healing. Well, those feelings might be of external or internal sources. So when we do the emotional release exercise, which is a very beautiful piece, we just try to measure if that, like the sentence I said, is it your own or is it from an external source? So if it's from external source, just you will make the energy go back to its source and you deal with what's left from it. What's left from it might be energy and talk. So the energy, we can spin the energy, change how it looks, where it is in the body, what's the color, and we can have a lot of submodality work with it. So the work with the energy and changing its color and its source, it's very powerful. Then we come to the language, the talk, that I deserve whatever. So this word, you can have write it down slowly and very letter by letter. You say it in a different tempo, you say it in a slower way, you say it in a way over and over, slower and slower until it's fading and it's not there anymore. So at any point of the trauma journey, these limiting feelings and these limiting words and talks can be released and transformed to their positive gift. So at that point, when we were in the master classes and with Marilou and Jerry, with my lovely ladies, I had a lot of support and a lot of backing up with different NLP tools and hypnosis tools to make me feel better and to feel having these blocks removed throughout my journey. And the next slide, we will talk about the main and important thing we talk with the ladies in cancer: conditioning. So as I said, having parents that are lost from cancer, the energy and the conditions that I used to tell myself, okay, it's in the genes, or it's there, I can have this because they had it. Or what I hear from some of my clients, like, once I have this, it's never will be gone. And actually, one of my clients, when she used to think that this is not going anywhere, this will be a disease that's making life-threatening and ending some people's lives. So at the end, it wasn't working very well with her. So amazingly, the studies showed that our cells listen carefully to what we say internally. So your Matilda or your inner friend, what you say to yourself inside your body, inside your mind, will manifest on your body. As Fanika said, Marilou always say, your body will reveal what your mind conceal. Actually, your mind will conceal, yes, but your mind might say it to yourself. I know some people like say, it's about time to have, for example, hypertensive drugs. So because my dad, he had the hypertensive drugs about my age, and he starts to take the hypertensive drugs. So conditioning is very, very, very powerful tool that might not work well with you. So we came up with the concept of 30 days affirmations. So actually affirmations are the complete opposite of conditioning. So what we would do, and I go into a simple discovery with my client about what she says to herself in her mind. So we write them down and we try to convert them to be affirmations. So affirmation statements like need to be positive, need to be in the I, as the conditioning is I also, and the language is the present tense. So for example, I deserve the best. If you want to have like I deserve, I am worth it. I love myself. I love who I am or how I am, of course, after surgeries and after losing some parts of the body. I can do this. I can beat this. I can beat the dis-ease, even if it's like, it's not like always cancer, but the dis-ease. So as a recommendation, the 30 days affirmations can go as one affirmation in the morning, one affirmation at the night for 30 days. Or if you want more affirmations, you can use 10 days and have the affirmation once in the morning and once in the evening for 10 days. And actually, I recommend have one affirmation in the morning and one affirmation in the night for 10 days in 3 segments. So to be honest, this particular piece made me go through a lot because I stayed for 3 months trying to heal, and that healing was obstacled and not working well. Then when I started to use these 2 tools, the healing wheel, and try to check where exactly I was not working very well, and I discovered that my talk to my inner talk to myself, to my Nermil inside me, wasn't that nice, wasn't that encouraging, wasn't in the affirmative way. It was conditioning, and I kept on going to bed many nights telling myself that I cannot sleep, and eventually I had the nights without sleeping, and my condition was going from bad to worse. So I was determined to have this changed, as we will see in a bit with a narrative redefining with Marilou Seavey. Everything was like talking to me to change, and my body was talking to me that something is not working. And actually all the 4 pillars were not the way I thought. I thought I didn't need to work on my exercise because I exercise once a month. Other people are not exercising at all. I drink a small bottle of water. Other people are not drinking at all. I sleep 2 hours per night. Other people are not sleeping at all like that. So eventually these comparisons were not even helpful. In the coming slide, I will be sharing the essence of my talk, the effective healing communication. Why I'm calling it effective? Because it needs to be reciprocal. It needs to be from in and out. So healing requires removal of the blockages. So letting go is not it doesn't happen automatically. I thought it happens automatically. Like if I forget about it, it means I let go of it. Actually, no, it doesn't. Letting go needs a process that you have intention to let go of the person, the idea, the bad memory, letting go of the unhealthy energy. Forgiveness, as one of the best ladies we have today, Bina, you will meet shortly, taught me that would be a key in your healing. As also, I thought I don't need forgiveness because I don't hold grudges for anyone. Actually, forgiveness needs intention and direction to people and yourself to forgive and go through a simple technique to forgive. Your mind can't distinguish between experience and reality. So be careful of having meanings and perspectives that are not working well from that experience with your body and your life. So holding things into your reality from the past or from other people's experience might not be very helpful, as I did with holding some of the experiences from my mom or from my dad into my experience that didn't work well with my healing for some couple of months. What you believe and say to yourself can manifest in your body. And actually it does most of the times. I used to say, I don't like, and actually I sometimes said, I hate my left breast until I lost it. And when you say to yourself things that are not nice, your body might be sensitive to it. Your inner talk becomes your life narrative and manifesto. So as a final slide, allow me to introduce your coming and your guide. You are about to meet your the one and only Marilou Seavey, our mentor, the person who has all the credit for this event to come true today. My backbone, my best friend, my role model. I believe that she is the role model for many of us at Mind Bridges. Well, not enough words can describe her and can satisfy my feelings for her. She will guide you through redefining your narrative. After a 5-minute stretch break, please join us shortly. Thank you very much.
So you've met my wonderful tribe of fellow journeyers, and what I'd like to talk about now is something that, well, first of all, some of you may not be familiar with NLP. So in a nutshell, NLP is, for me and for many, the study of patterns that show up in our behavior, which include our language, show up in our internal experience, which includes the sensations in our body, our thinking, shows up in our emotions, all of which comprise and organize to allow us to be present in the world or not present, as the case may be, in such a way that we rely on our history and we rely on how we know ourselves from our perspectives to engage. And sometimes we do that brilliantly, and other times, well, not so much so. NLP is a study and becomes a practice and becomes something deeply ingrained. And for me, it's a way of life. It's a way of seeing the world and looking past the story, yet valuing the story as carrying the patterns that move us forward. So next slide, please. So I'd like you to have a bit of an understanding of the heroine's journey as we describe it. Joseph Campbell defined what's called a monomyth, consistent through all cultures. And it has three primary elements to it. It's got a departure. He called it the hero's journey, but we're moving into a little more balance these days, and we've called it the heroine's journey. We've taken these three major elements of it and utilized what we've experienced with ourselves, with our clients, to better understand how this can be replicated and utilized by others. The heroine leaves the familiarity of a world through choice or default, but there is deeply a recognition and a necessity for change. My change came about, I was pushed, I was prodded, I was pulled, until finally life and the universe put me in a situation, or I put me in a situation where what was inevitable was that I moved from the life I knew into something that was completely and totally unknown. Many of the women that yourselves, women here, talk about fear. I think I passed fear along the road and went right smack into terror, but it didn't stop me, because as one of my clients once said, you're either a victim, which as a child you often are, or you're a volunteer. And I chose to take that journey not knowing where I was going for the longest time. In the initiation part of the journey, you begin to discover resources. You learn how to navigate. You learn how to face the challenges. You find mentors. You find resources, whether they be training or books, or we, as human beings, we learn in three ways. We learn vicariously by watching and understanding in our way how others do something. We learn from information that we pick up along the way, and we learn from experience. So in the initiation part of the journey, we find within ourselves strengths that were already there, but they awaken, they come to life, and they become our touchstone, they become our North Star, to the point where we begin that return home, where home is not just a place we go to, but it's a quality of being, who we are for ourselves when we show up fully and completely, who we are for others when we want them to see within themselves that they're not alone, that they can do this. If you could go to the next slide. Life, this is Jonathan Adler. I love this quote from him. Life is incredibly complex. There's so much going on in our environment and in our lives at all times. And in order to hold on to our experience, we need to make meaning out of the way it's structured in our lives through stories. And so if you could take this off and now, and I'll go to full screen. I spent numerous hours preparing a script. This morning, I threw that script out because I knew that what my group, my tribe had to share with you was going to say everything and more than what I can say. But for those of you who know me, and some of you here do, I can always come up with something to say. So here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that, especially in the world today, we need each other. We do. We're not on this journey alone. We're fellow travelers. And yes, there will be people who what matters most to them is the glitz and the glamour, how they look, what they have, their power, their prestige. But there will always be those of us who care more about who we are and how we make meaning of life, what we leave behind. These women that are on this group with me today, my tribe of amazing women who are extraordinary in so many ways, they found within themselves what you all have within you. Because if you didn't have it, you wouldn't be on this program. There's something within all of us that wants our lives to be better, stronger, deeper, more meaningful. We want to create a better world. We want to make a difference for ourselves and for others. Along my journey, I've had teachers and mentors. I'm an avid reader. I spent most of my childhood buried in a library, partly because there was no air conditioning anywhere and the library was cement and it was cool. But I discovered in books that I could travel to places that I couldn't get to physically. I used to get on my bike as a kid and ride through the city of Boston to places that were a different neighborhood, a way of life that I thought at that time represented what I wanted. I just wanted to get away because I didn't have a place that I felt at home. Only later to learn in life that home isn't a place you get to. Home is a place where you are. I had to learn that my story, the story I told myself, what I learned from others, how I interpreted everything that was taking place for me, around me, within me, I was using past history, understandings that were incomplete, pieces of other people's story to patchwork a life. And it wasn't ever the life I really wanted. Because honestly, I didn't know what I wanted, but I do now. I've reached a point in my life where I no longer color my hair. Yeah, I still wear makeup, still like my home, building a new one, you know. But what matters most is what I have inside me that I can share, teach, allow someone else to see. I don't care whether they pull it out of me, drag it out of me, or take it as a gift. But I know that each and every one of us in this journey that we're on, we're making ourselves a victorious creation of extraordinary. And extraordinary doesn't mean that we have it all, that we're wealthy and famous and powerful. Extraordinary means that every moment of every day, the good, the bad, the ugly, what's good, what is working, what isn't working, it's precious, it's meaningful. And that when we can step back, and it's not always easy, but we can, it's available to us to step back, to step outside and ask ourselves simple questions. Who is this person? What does she want? Where is she going? You know, every story has a beginning, it has a middle, it has an ending. And our stories are never ending. As long as we're here, we're in the process of redefining our stories. I used to speak as a motivational, positive thinking, thought leader for a company. I traveled all over the world with my husband. I remember once being in Budapest speaking to a couple of thousand people. And after I left the stage and they were so happy, I didn't feel that I had made a difference because I still hadn't made a difference within myself. I knew what to say. I knew how to say it. I knew the right things to do, but it didn't resonate completely. And then one day, when I was down on my knees, curled up, asking for some reason to keep going, NLP came into my life. It just kind of fell in my lap. Somebody said, hey, here's a book. You're into this motivational work. You might like this. It's Frogs into Princes. You know, I grew up with insomnia. I had that down pat. Frogs into Princes put me to sleep because I couldn't get the message that was in there. And I picked it up over and over and over. It's not the most well-written book because it's transcripted, but I knew that there was something there. Back then, that was almost probably close to 40 years ago. The only way to get NLP was to find someone that taught it. Well, there were no one teaching it except in California, and I lived on the East Coast. And so I found somebody that was using it, and I went to him. And the first time I saw him, he who became my teacher, my mentor, he was at a yoga studio, and he was wrapped up in a turban and white robes. He was an American who had left the world that I knew, and I came in with my heels and my fancy clothes and my jewelry, and there was no place to sit because they only had pillows. Little did I know that he was flying back and forth to California to learn NLP, and I was his only client. He was a yoga teacher, but he became a spiritual guide. And he taught me that the trappings of the world that I built my story around weren't real. They were temporary. And along the way, working with him, a little boy taught me once when he was staying at my house and he broke something that was valuable. And I saw the look in his face, and he saw the look on my face. And I realized that he knew something more than I knew. His concern for me, for my being upset, my judging him, changed my life. I've met mentors at every age from different countries. I've traveled all over the world, and the same thing shows up again and again. This story, this narrative that we create, yes, we can manifest. Yes, the law of attraction has value for us, but ultimately it's what's deepest inside. What are the patterns that we hold to be true? How do we stop and step back and say, this is not it? Where is our North Star, our guidance system, our GPS, other than inside? No one but no one will live your life for you. You and you alone live your life. You're the one that you take to sleep each night. You're the one that you listen to when others don't. That you inside, that can't be defined by what you look like and what you have. But like Gemma says, it's important at some level of living in this society to pay attention to our wealth, our worth, to manifest. But all the money in the world won't make you happy. I once worked for a multi-millionaire. He wasn't happy. He wanted to be. New cars, boats, planes, trains, anything he wanted, he had. But he didn't have his own self because he was so afraid of judgment. And me, one of my trainers once said to me, Marilou, if you're in a room with 30 people, there's 31 of you. And the only one that really matters is the one that you know. So I want you to know yourself more deeply. I want you to learn how to rewrite your story because it is yours. You came here, whether you came from a prior life or you are ready for your next life, it doesn't matter. This is the life that you have. And this is the life that you can do something with. This is the life where you can create extraordinary in the ordinary. And you can do that. Because if I can do it, you can do it. It's available to everyone. I don't have all of the titles and the degrees and the power and the wealth, but I have something within me that keeps me going. Do I have always a wonderful, happy, gee, this is perfect? No. My heart breaks, but it doesn't break because someone broke it. It breaks open again and again and again to things that matter, to be more compassionate with myself and others, and patient with myself and with others, and understanding, because everyone has this story, and not everyone's story is at their happy ending yet. So let's put those slides back on and look at how we can work to create a story. Okay. Narrative psychology is becoming more and more popular. And so it's not a one single well-defined theory. but it refers to a range of approaches to examine the role of stories, all stories, in human life and thought. So our stories are our personal narratives. It's how we link or connect all that's happening within and around us with our past and our future. Next slide. Yeah, this was me. I was already a motivational speaker at that point. But that image, I might look okay, but I'm not okay. I spent most of my time feeling like I was lost, I didn't belong, and I didn't have value. So I strove over and over to be the best I could be, to give, to help, to fix, because I didn't know how to do that for myself. And my mentors came along and my journey started. Next slide. So I saw this years and years ago. I think I actually saw it written, I'm putting this together in my story now, as a quote from Carl Jung in a book that I read almost 50 years ago. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. James Hillman wrote a book that's a classic. It's called The Soul's Code. Just shortly before I started my NLP journey, I found that book. And that book woke something up in me that I let go to sleep again. And then it woke up again, and it woke up again, and it woke up again. And it woke me up to the point where I came to realize what's on the next slide. Johari window, please. You may or may not be familiar with this. There's lots of material on the Johari window. It's generally used in a work context, corporate context. So these are elements of who you are in how you do you in the world. You have your private self. These are secrets and things that other people don't know about you. You keep them hidden as much as you can. Mostly they're elements that range between, I don't want anyone to know, and I don't want to brag about it. But they are your private self. It's a part of you. And then there's what you let others know, your public self. Both your private self and your public self, you are aware of. Your public self is how you show up for others, what you want others to see and know and think about you. This is your persona. Or as Gemma said, it was her mask. The facade, the essence of the private self that you will allow out for others. And over time, that's going to crack here and there. I can remember numerous times when students or clients came up to me and caught me on something where the facade cracked. And I retreated back into my private self because I didn't want that known. We also have elements of who we are that's hidden to ourselves. What other people know about you, but you don't know. You don't know that they know. Now, my husband and I have been together a long time, and we know things about each other, and we'll talk about this, that we can't see in ourselves. And I'll ask him, not how did I do, but what am I missing? What's right there that you can see that I don't see? And sometimes it surprises me. And sometimes I recognize, yeah, that was something that I have been hiding. And it makes that unknown part more open. The unknown is your potential, your hidden talents, your untried qualities, your future. The unknown ideally will shrink. What's hidden to yourself, your blind spots, will become visible. Your private self and your public self will merge. And in your ideal narrative, the more comfortable you are with being authentic, the more all of these quadrants come together in a way that is a unique expression of who you are. Would you go to the next slide, please? So I want you to just think about this. There are people in your world that see you so differently than you see yourself. If your life were a novel, a story, what genre would your story fall under? Would it be a mystery? I wanted my life to be a mystery at a certain time, especially when I was a teenager. Could it be a thriller? Something waiting around the corner to pounce? Yeah, if there's a bit of victim in there, then often it's a thriller. Maybe you want it to be a romance where there'll be presents and flowers and it will be so smooth, and most romances, well, they in the East they say you fall in like before you fall in love. Here in the West we tend to fall in lust, and then if we're lucky we fall in like and then fall in love. Would your genre be speculative fiction, science fiction, fantasy, a magical realism? That's the world of woo-woo. It's not that there's anything wrong with having crystals or burning sage. I've done it myself. But there's so much more that we have power over than just what we use as totems. And they can be useful. Or would it be a tragedy? Today, in the world in which we all participate, there are people, women, children, men, who are in stages of their lives that are tragic, but they don't all enter into the tragedy. They stand up and they keep moving because they have something within them when they're on this part of the journey, whether they be in the Sudan or whether they be in Syria, in the border at Mexico and the US, whether they be in the Ukraine, anywhere right now where there is tragedy. Not everyone is tragic. Would you move to the next slide, please? So how we create this narrative, this beginning, that place that pushes us to promote our greatest growth, where we create in that middle, that nadir, that depth of what appears to be despair, the pit of what we've experiencing that we want free from. That's where meaning comes. And the end, that's where transformation comes. That's where our story becomes, where we contribute, where something that has happened to us, the benefit of what our experience is, can be so empowering that it's not just ourselves, but others that benefit from it. And so the next slide, please. And this is what it looks like when we're moving out, the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's like a smile. When we reach that point where we're transforming our stories, we have within us a space where we smile from the depth of our being, even when it's sad, even when we look out at our life and see pain and suffering, we can know from within that this too will pass. So the next slide. So you're going to have to redefine that storyline, ladies and gentlemen, because no one's going to do it for you. So let's look at some of these questions. If you were outside of the theme of your story, the genre that your story runs, from a perspective of a mentor, if you had a mentor, what theme would they see in your story? And if there was someone, if you were that mentor looking out, what point did that main character recognize in her journey? What was the point where she turned around and said yes to a different world? What were the challenges she encountered that empowered her or changed her? And what did the experience that seemed so tough mean about how she saw herself? I think about what Claudia, and when I think of what some of these women went through, when I think about Fanica growing up in Serbia in a war zone, when I think about Nerman going through cancer, and Danya hiding, and Gemma having it all and finding herself. What's most important? What meaning do we give to our lives? What meaning do we take from our life about ourselves? What does the whole of the experience mean if we become the heroine? What values did we violate or ignore until that point in time where we finally faced a new point, a new direction, and we said yes to what we wanted? When did that heroine, that you in that story, awaken to your own strength? And what decisions brought about that new story to life? What's your story? What are your resources? If you were to recognize the theme of the protagonist in your narrative, what resources are there that she's not recognizing or using to her advantage? What's stopping her? If she had a mentor, a guide, a real or imagined one, what does that other, that mentor, recognize that she isn't seeing? And so today, how will you rewrite her story to bring her resources to life? Because you've decided to become the heroine in your own story. What do you want? For those of you that study NLP, you know that the outcome frame starts with the question, what do you want? But it's stated and meant to be stated in the positive, as if you already have it. The future will always be the future. So when you begin to change your language, it's not I will be the heroine, it's I am the heroine. I will be creative. No, it's I am creative. I will be healthy. I am healthy. The I am is a statement of identity. It allows for beliefs that support the heroine within to emerge. It gives us a direct connection to our resources, our strengths. And when they're not within us, it gives us the power to reach out, to make those decisions and have the courage to set the boundaries, to find our worth, to heal what we need to heal, to say what we need to say, to ask what we need to ask for, so that we can define our life our way. And that's our gift. For years, I studied the Course in Miracles. And one of the signs I have, believe it or not, it's actually in my garage. It says, you are entitled to miracles because you are one. And we live inside an energy that is miraculous. I grew up in Irish Catholic Boston. I grew up with a family that was creatively dysfunctional to the extreme. Had they known, they being my parents, my grandparents, my relatives, my neighbors, what I know, they would have done something different, but they did the best they could. And if I don't look back on that part of my life and forgive and understand with compassion, it becomes an anchor that holds me back. Robert Bligh, who is the American poet and author who formulated the men's movement, said in one of the books of his that I read that when we're born, we're given this sack and we throw it over our shoulder. And into that sack, we throw all of the shoulds and musts and have tos that we're taught throughout our life. The ones that others give us, the ones that we give ourselves, the rules about how to be who we are. And it gets heavier and heavier, and we drag it with us. And when Nerman said, one of the things that matters is to let go, that's what you let go of. You let go of other people's versions of you, and you write your own story, because that's, regardless of who you are, what age, what you're going through, that's when you start to be your heroine. It's your narrative. Would you go to the next slide, please? Shortly, you're going to take the next part of this journey. We didn't expect that in this short period of time, your life would change completely. because it didn't happen for any of us that way. It took time. But what we've offered you and what you'll have in the PDF as you review this, you have some steps, and you've got your own also. You've got ways in which you define your life, where you rewrite your story. And you don't have to tell your story to anyone but yourself. Because as you retell and redefine your story, you create a legacy of being you your way, of creating an energy that will foster the change slowly and surely, a healing of your body and your mind, your emotions, so that your soul shows through, so that the purpose that so many clients come to, I want to find my purpose. They don't find it. It's revealed. And yours will show itself to you as you take care of loving yourself. And so now you're going to meet one of my other amazing members of this Creating Extraordinary Lives tribe, Bina Matthews. Bina?
28 years and 1 week ago to the day, I received the news that my dad had passed away, returned to the divine source in a city that was across the country. And as I stood in front of a super packed church a few days later, sharing my best memories of my dad and what he had left behind for my brothers and I, the irony was not lost on me. Because my dad had always taught us that you appreciate people here and now. You make them realize they matter, that they make a difference, that they are seen now. So if you think someone did an awesome job, tell them now. Someone's leaving and you're going to miss them, let them know now. Interestingly enough, this is also the best way to prevent or minimize regrets. Now, this is where the irony comes in, because my dad's favorite saying was, or favorite warning to us was, don't sing my praises at my funeral and don't come and place flowers on my grave. Because you remember, flowers are for the living. Brighten people's lives while they are here to enjoy it. And the crowd that packed and overflowed that church that day was proof that this was true. So from senior politicians and heads of multinationals, of NGOs across the world, to slum dwellers and street dwellers, everyone came and told us a personal story about how my dad had supported what they do and had made them feel special, had seen them and recognized what they do. And that's when it hit me. His legacy was far bigger than just our family. It lived across the world. It's also the day that I realized two important things. One, my purpose in life. And two, that one person can make a difference. Because obviously it was impossible for me to grow up with parents who were serving the downtrodden and not grow up wanting to change the world, right? But I had always felt helpless and useless as an individual without the money, the power, the clout to bring about that change. Until that day. Until that day when I realized just how powerful one person can be and how that one person can touch so many lives when they're fueled by a sense of purpose. So, what was this purpose I discovered? Cue drum roll. We have one go at this ride we call life, right? There's no do-over. So we have to make it count. On that day, I realized that my purpose was to consciously create an awareness of how unique each of us is. Just how full of possibility and choices and the ability to fulfill our higher purpose. And by finding our higher purpose, and fulfilling it, we will live forever through our legacy that we leave behind. So just hang on. Let's go back to the flowers slide. So every life that I bring this awareness to, every person I help to find their purpose and legacy and how they will achieve it, they go on to practice it and share it, and boom, I've created an exponential wave of upliftment and motivation that will continue to ripple on long after I'm gone. And that will be my legacy. And that's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm kidding. You didn't get away that easily. Seriously, though. So what was my journey if I discovered my purpose so early in life? Well, life, as they say, happens. And we take paths that we never thought we would, and other needs and goals start battling for our need for our attention and resources. Somewhere along the way, purpose quietly takes a backseat, but it doesn't actually disappear, because at some point, it's going to make its absence felt. For me, this manifested in full body hives and rushing to the ER thrice in 4 months, battling for breath. At the end of my presentation, I'm going to show you a beautiful picture that you are going to enjoy. My body was truly revealing what my mind was concealing and refusing to accept. I didn't feel fulfilled in my current role. I was not serving my purpose, and my body was done with continuing there. Next slide, please, Rebecca. I'll give you a minute to read that. So back in the day when they weren't particularly bothered by gender discrimination, they coined the term history, his story, to represent humankind's collective legacy. That which continued to live through the ages in the form of stories. We all seek immortality through different means, having children, establishing a foundation, donating to charity. Almost everything we do is to ensure that we will be remembered. I've been trying to get friends to name their kids after me with no luck so far, but hope springs eternal, and one day it's going to happen. If any of you names your kid Bina, please let me know and put me out of my misery. What continues to surprise me when I'm dealing with clients, when I'm speaking to groups, is when people say, I'm too young to think about my legacy. Either they know something I don't, or they've been given a promise that they'll be given a heads up so they know when to begin. Because think about the stories we have heard so far from these amazing women. The hero or heroine is given this title because their journey doesn't just benefit themselves, does it? It's always for the greater good. So what lies at the end of your journey? What stories will be told? The word legacy has come to have so many connotations, some negative, usually from an IT perspective, as in, oh, we inherited legacy systems that are clunky. Or, you know, he's left such an amazing legacy, which is $1 billion foundation, or material goods that someone inherits. Now, for me, legacy isn't just some fluffy feel-good stuff that applies only to my personal life. It isn't something that you leave only when you're dead. It's what you leave behind after every interaction. Whether it's with an organization or a person, what have you passed on that they can then carry on and pass on to someone else? So for instance, in my corporate avatar, I applied this to the role that HR played in the company. They're traditionally the bad guys, scapegoat for all policy staff don't like. As the head of internal comms, I help them to transform the way they connected with the rest of the company. Now, this was not a one-off change. It was permanent. It resulted in people engaging more. It resulted in people perceiving them differently, and that continued after I left. So that's my legacy in that place. The 6 of us here today, for instance, are Marilou's legacy. Because we are storming forward on our individual paths, bolstered by what she has taught us and passed on to us as our trainer, mentor, and sister. And now we're sharing it with all of you. And so her legacy continues along with ours. And I would be remiss at this point if I didn't mention Jerry, because they're pretty much a package deal, which benefits us greatly. So if you look at this image, if you look at the image of, no, not this one, sorry. Think of stairs that take you up a mountain. As we go along our journey, we should be carving steps into the trail that make it easier for the people who follow to get to their destination faster and more easily. And that is what we do as mentors, passing on not just our expertise, but our learnings, our tips and tricks, hacks that will help our mentee bypass some of the obstacles that we had to face so that they have an easier journey. So give it a thought. It doesn't matter which line of work you are in, or if you don't work, just think of where you are in life at this moment. What are the obstacles you faced? How did you overcome them? How could you pass on that learning? In the next slide, you will see a really heartwarming picture. And it's very interesting when the picture is just shown the different interpretations that are given to it. This is Mr. Hayes, janitor at Pike County Elementary, celebrating his 80th birthday party. And the children and teachers threw him a surprise party. Now, this is a testament to the man's life and work. That picture is truly worth 1,000 words. So when you ask, when I'm done with my role, what will it mean? Mr. Hayes, I'm sure, walked away with a very, very content heart. So you've been listening for quite some time. Here's something for you to do. Close your eyes and take a deep breath. Slowly let it go. That's right. Now visualize that it's your 80th birthday bash. Maybe there's lovely cake and decorations. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's music playing. Now, who are you celebrating with? Who is sitting around you? Don't overthink it. Just let the people who pop into your head pop in. Just off the top of your head, who do you see at the party? The only people there are the ones you'd like to be there. Now imagine each of them standing up and telling everyone else in one sentence what you mean to them or how you impacted their life. What are they saying? Is there a pattern to the things that are being said? If you like, you can open your eyes and write down some of the things you just heard. And as you replay all the things that were said about you, ask yourself, does the narrative you are telling at work and in life match up with the narrative you want told? When I did this exercise a few years ago in my corporate avatar, I realized that nobody said anything related to work. And that was my aha moment, when I was literally giving everything I had, body, mind, and soul, like I could not be replaced in that role. When I looked at myself at 80, there was no one from work. There was nothing being said about me and my professional life. My job was insignificant in the greater scheme of my life. And that brought things into sharp perspective, leading to my journey of discovery about what was significant to me and how I was going to achieve it. And that is how someone who didn't believe in coaching and was extremely cynical about it came to be enrolled in a class, because as we all know, there are no coincidences and we never meet anyone by accident. And we are all in the place that we're meant to be at. So if you are in this meeting, in this session, listening to this, you are ready to either embark on your journey or to take it a notch up. Training to be an NLP master coach played this role in my life, because not only did it reconnect me to my purpose, because my purpose, I was happy to discover, has remained true and remained the same, but it reconnected me after all these years. And it also gave me now a means to fulfill it. I want to help people discover their purpose, to help them live a better life. NLP gives me that resource to do it. So you have heard enough about NLP now across the session, so I'm not going to tell you any more about it. So although this was an extremely interesting journey, I'll spare you the details and skip to the bit where I had a critical decision to make. Seeing my goal clearly, knowing what was asked of me, could I take the leap of faith into the unknown? If you've seen Indiana Jones's movies, you remember the leap of faith scene in The Last Crusade. It's one of the most powerful scenes that I have ever seen. Only in the leap from the lion's head will he prove his worth. Only by stepping off the edge of the precipice into the scary unknown could he find the bridge that would take him to his destination. So it meant for me letting go of financial stability, a stable income, becoming an entrepreneur in what was a fairly new field, because people were still wrapping their heads around what coaching is. In my 40s, with 2 kids, still studying. But my family was my rock, and they backed me up 100%. Even if it meant changing the life we were living, I think they were just done with the ER visits and the hive-filled face and body. So 5 years later, here I am, walking that bridge and feeling like $1 million, hopefully making $1 million soon too. Most importantly of all, making 1 million people feel like $1 million as well. Has it been hard? Hell yes. Have there been moments when I felt like giving up, feeling so guilty that my decision affected not just me, but my whole family as well? Absolutely. And Marilou, being the amazing mentor she is, would always pop up at the right time and say, you know, the universe always tests you to make sure that you really are committed to the path you're on. So you will come to those forks in the road and you will question your choices. And then the decision that you make will reiterate your commitment. And that is so true. So I'm happy to say that I stayed the course. And this was only because I remembered why I took the decision. And then recalling the lives that have been transformed because I took that decision. And that helps me to recommit to it every day. So in the next slide, I'm sure now you're all like, well, we've loved hearing your journey, Veena, but how do we go about discovering what our legacy will be? So as my fellow guides have already shared, every question they asked along the way leads to this. So your purpose and your legacy are like the reference picture of a completed jigsaw puzzle. Once you know what you're working towards, it will guide your every decision, every choice, every boundary you set, every mindset you choose to have. It will define your sense of self-worth and the design for your narrative. And the sense of living life to your fullest potential at the highest level. So you saw that how every journey we've taken, every step of the journey we've taken through is interconnected, right? It leads you from one to the other, and finding your purpose and defining your legacy ties it all together. Remember the hero and the heroine's journey. They don't just embark on this journey without a sense of what will be achieved at the end of it. That's what purpose is. And as they journey on towards fulfilling that purpose, how will they help those who follow? That's what your legacy is. Once you have this reference picture, the questions that normally stump us or that become reasons for internal conflict and for inner turmoil, what kind of job do I select? What kind of manager will I be? For instance, if my purpose is to help people level up to their highest potential, then I choose to be an enabling manager who empowers and doesn't micromanage. My parenting choices are guided as well. I want to enable my daughters to have the courage to fulfill their higher calling. Then I need to lead by example, because children, as we all know, do as we do and not as we say. What kind of a partner do I look for? Do I need a partner? Who are the people I choose to surround myself with? What are the influences I permit? How do I draw my boundaries? What are the criteria for my self-worth? You see what I mean? Your purpose becomes your roadmap, because at every stage, every one of these questions you ask, the corresponding question is, does it serve my purpose? Is it taking me closer to it, or is it taking me away or back? Decision-making becomes so much easier when you know what your purpose is. Now, if your purpose is your roadmap, anyone who has followed a map or GPS or whichever navigation system, you know, despite all the attention that you give it, you're bound to go off track every now and then, right? But having a clear destination plotted always brings you back on track. Perhaps after a bit of a detour. Yeah, but sometimes detours are good because you've got to take the scenic route sometimes. It's what makes the journey more exciting and adventurous after all. And who knows what people, lessons, experiences were hidden on these unplanned roads. So as I said, nothing is a mistake. Nothing is a coincidence. If you've taken a detour, it's because there's something that you didn't know you needed to see, experience, or do. So the Legacy 5-step, you have the PDF, so you can go through this on your own. Who am I? What do I stand for? Remember to set aside all preconceived notions, all conditioned thinking, all programming from your childhood. Shut out all those voices and all that input and just leave it open to the thought coming in. Who am I? What do I stand for? A genuine desire to bring about change. The reason I see genuine is because it's easy to just want to change, especially in a world which has a million things going wrong, and we want to change it all. What are the things you passionately feel about, which you have a genuine, because when you have a genuine desire to bring about change, it is followed by commitment and hard work. And look at how you can be a mentor to others. Again, many of my clients say, oh, but I've just been in the business for 5 years. How can I be a mentor? Mentor is somebody who's got 20 years under their belt. Every stage we have conquered, we can mentor someone else in. We can transfer knowledge, values, life lessons. So look at how you can be a mentor to others. Outcomes that endure are not just instant gratification, but something that will be able to be sustained, that will be able to pass on. Remember to take that leap of faith. That bridge refuses to show up no matter how many spotlights you shine on it. It only shows up when you take that leap of faith. So once you found it out, trust me, it will show up. And in the next slide, I will give you a couple of action points. That you can translate it immediately. Support the people and causes that are important to you in whatever capacity you have. This is again because we equate it with, I don't have the power to change policy, or I don't have the funds to eliminate poverty. You know, do what is within your reach and capacity. Reflect and decide what is most important in your life. We all have such busy lives with so many things filling it. What is most important to you? Do the 80th birthday exercise again, please. It is the most powerful exercise I know, because it has shaken people who have believed firmly for, say, 50 years in their life that they have a certain a purpose, or that something is important to them. And when they look at this moment and realize, oh my God, there was nothing that represented that. There's something else that showed up, and that something else is something they've ignored all this while. So decide what's most important in your life. Remember, that will help you to make your choices. Does this serve that? Does it help me fulfill it? Does it bring me closer? Share your blessings with others. I have a very disgusting example. I suffer from allergies, and I went to the ENT doctor, and he told me, don't blow your nose like that. The more you try to clear it out, the more phlegm comes in. And unfortunately, like my children say, I'm seeing life lessons everywhere. I was like, oh my God, that's just like blessings. If we just hang on to them, more can't flow in. So share your blessings with others. The more you give, the more you receive. Be a mentor to others. Pursue your passions because they're infectious. You pursuing something wholeheartedly will inspire someone else to do the same, or will inspire someone else to say, what am I passionate about? Now, all of this sounds really amazing, and you're all raring to go. It won't be easy. Stay the course. And I would recommend that when you go through this again, and you go through all the exercises that the other ladies have shared, don't just type it into your computer, because neuroscience has proven that when you write something that takes deep thought, you build over 10,000 new neural pathways in your brain in one sitting. Whereas when you just type it out on a computer, you are only building 600 new neural pathways. So you do the math, because I suck at it. 10,000 is definitely a lot more than 600. So get out a pen and a book and write out these things. And you will also be amazed at the clarity that comes. You think you know, but when you write, there will be so many surprises that come along the way. So let it not be said that I made a promise and didn't deliver. Here's the glamorous picture that I promised you. Rebecca, let's unleash it on them. Yeah, that beauty on the left is me just before one of the ER visits. And this isn't even the extreme state that it would reach. My whole, the nutty professor, well, I would be doing nutty professor impersonations, and it was just stress. So where I am today is the picture on the right, where I was recently recognized for being a mentor. Words are good, but for me, the deeper thing is that it's just validation that I'm on the right path. So as we imagine a world in which everyone is fulfilling a higher purpose, working towards leaving a legacy of good beyond their own personal narrow needs, take these steps away with you. Reflect on that 80th birthday and what is being said about you. And that will get your journey started. Bon voyage. So next up is where it all comes together, people. Marilou will be uploading a neat package that will give you access to all these resources whenever you need them, as she takes you through an Ericksonian process, a metaphoric journey that will reach you in the way to best serve your growth. After that, we will have a Q&A, so stay tuned. Over to you, Marilou.
Great. So thank you, ladies, for everything that you've contributed to my life, to my journey. And what I want for all of you is for you to just settle back for a moment. And depending on whether you want to close your eyes or stare into space, I want to take you through a journey. Long time ago and very far away, I learned that stories make all the difference in the world. Milton Erickson was famous for telling stories. And so here's a story about a heroine's journey. Once upon a time, on a rainy day in a busy city, a young woman stopped inside a library, partly to get away from the rain and the wind and the cold, partly to find a place of solitude and quiet. But going into the library, she couldn't just stand there and wait for the rain to pass. So she walked over through one aisle after another until she came to a section where they had biographies. And there was one book that was sticking out of the shelf. Now, I don't know if you've been to libraries lately, but I used to love my library. Some of the books in a library are new with a shiny plastic cover. Some of them are very old. And this book was a very old one. The spine was broken. The edges were wrinkled and ripped. And she pulled this book out because somehow or another, it was inviting. It was almost as if it had a glow around it. She walked over to the table and she set it down carefully. And she opened the book. Fascinated, she read a story about a woman who had passed away, who had written about her life, all of the ups and the downs and the all-arounds, the people that had loved her and hated her, had helped her grow and who pushed her one way and another. And as she read this story, it was almost as if something woke up inside her. And she felt confused, curious. She felt touched, and she felt angry. And it was almost as if a whole range of emotions were released. And she read faster and faster, as if she could devour this experience in a way that would make it more solid, more real, more meaningful. And then she noticed that there was an elderly woman standing near her who handed her a towel and said, "Here, dry those tears." And the reader looked up and said, "Oh, no, they're not tears. It's from the rain." And then she realized that there were tears. There were tears flowing down her face. And the elderly woman pulled out a chair and sat near her and said, "This book, this story, it's about a heroine. She's gone now, but she leaves something behind. Her story is everyone's story. It's your story." And the reader said, "Oh, no, not really. It's not my story. I just needed to get out of the rain. I just needed to get away." And the elderly lady said, "Yes, I know. We all have to get away. We keep trying to get away until we find the way is really meant for us to find something more, something like the writer had found, a journey within that brought her something. Keep reading. There's something in there for you." And the young woman, who was starting to dry off and had dried her tears, kept reading and got caught in a tale. And it took her somewhere beyond herself. It took her into a time and space. There was no time and space. It took her into a realm of divine where there was a soul that resonated because it was the soul of the writer. And the reader recognized something familiar. And the soul of the writer was the soul of the reader. It was the old woman. It was the story within every one of the biographies that were there, and the autobiographies, and the novels, and the dramas, the history. The entire library was a story. Your story. And the book that you have, that you're reading, is your book. Your novel, your history, your how-to. It's your legacy, because you are the soul and the older woman and the reader. And you are the heroine. So thank you very much. It's been such a wonderful journey with you today. We're going to do a Q&A, and then Rebecca will come on, tell you a little bit about the NLP conference, which if you are not signed up for, by all means sign up for. And so Andy, Rebecca, if you could push all of us on. We're closing in at the end of this, but we do want to offer you the opportunity, if you'd like to ask questions, if you could put all of the speakers up.
Fantastic. So Marilou, whilst we get all of the speakers up on the screen, I think Rebecca was just going to mention about the conference first, then that will give us a chance. If anybody's got a question, pop it into the chat, or we'll do an open Q&A for the presenters. So Rebecca, do you want to just share a little bit about the NLP conference in May, and then we'll come to Marilou and the team.
Thank you, Andy. So for any of you who might like to receive some details about the NLP International Conference, if you can pop yes, me into the chat, we will then be able to ensure that you all get the details of that. It's taking place virtually, which means you don't need to leave your homes. It's really nice. It's absolutely amazing and it's fabulous. And the dates for that are the 20th to the 22nd of May. There's lots of virtual sessions for you all as well that you'd be able to attend. And the recordings of all of the sessions are available for a long time afterwards. Well worth it. So if you ask for the info, we'll make sure it gets across to you. Thank you very much. Andy, coming back to you.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to spotlight Marilou and all of the other speakers, pop them up onto the screen. And so who's got a question for the panel? Who would like to ask a question to any of our amazing speakers from this afternoon? Let me just get 2 or more of you, 7 of you up on the screen. Who's got a question that they would like to ask? You can raise your hand or you can pop it into the chat. So there's a raise hand bar on there. Marilou, what's one of the things that people commonly find, I guess, is one of their biggest learnings going through this journey, going through like the integration process? What do you find is some of people's biggest sort of aha moments that you get when you go through this process with them?
I think my experience with my clients and with others that have done this journey work is that we reach a point where we get to this ego state as human beings where like, I got it, I know it, I know in here what I'm supposed to do, I've got everything lined up, but. So when there is a big but within us, that but is trying to open a door, it's like kind of butting our head against the truth of what we want to find within, because the answer is within. And do we need someone to sometimes shine a light because we're looking in the wrong direction? Of course. And that someone can be a friend. It can come to you via a book. I remember once lying on a beach in the Caribbean in the sun, and a couple walked up to me and said, "Here, I think you'd like this book." And to this day, and that had to be probably 50 plus years ago, it was Brooke Joy's Way. And the only thing I remember from that book was a statement that a client of his had made. It said, "Make no judgments, make no comparisons, and release the need to understand." Over 50 years ago. And someone gave me something that I needed and have used all these years. So sometimes the answer comes in an unexpected way, but usually it follows a yeah, but in our life.
Definitely. Some fantastic comments in the chat. Thanks, Marilou and your fellow lionesses. A wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much for living your legacies. Very inspirational. You're all amazing, inspiring women for sharing your stories, your journeys, your life lessons with us today. It's been an absolute privilege to learn from you this afternoon. My heart is rich and grateful. Thank you. Let me just see a couple of chats coming up at the bottom. Let me just see. So Alison's put, what gives you joy right now in this present moment? What gives you joy right now in this present moment? So Claudia, I saw you disappeared off to think that one. So I'm going to come to you for that.
What gives me joy? What I'm doing with my ladies. What I'm doing on a daily basis with my ladies. What I'm doing with my clients. I guess allowing whatever comes from the universe go through me to the people, to my clients, to my friends. That's what brings me joy. It's like I'm just I would say a vessel of that allows that information to pass through. I might not be the holder of the universal knowledge or the universal wisdom, but I can pass it on with my ladies.
Fantastic. And Fanika, how about for you, the same question? What brings you joy right now?
So for me, what brings me joy right now is being in the present moment, being here right now. That would be for me.
And Dania, how about for you?
For me as well, same as Fanika, being in the present moment, enjoying it. That's the joy right now.
Excellent. And Gemma, you've got to come up with a slightly different answer. You can't just go to see above.
No,
What else brings you joy?
a couple of things. First of all, people's openness with me. I am one of those people where people just open up, and that always makes me smile. And also nature, actually. I love being in the outdoors. We live in Dubai, so for those of you that are on the call that aren't from Dubai, you might think it's just sand, but it's actually quite a beautiful place. So being out in nature in Dubai gives me joy.
Fantastic. My wife and my two daughters are going there next week, actually, so they're really looking forward to it. I've not been yet, but I'm sending all the women in my life are going off to Dubai next week to experience that. So that'd be fantastic. Nermin, how about for you? What brings you joy?
Well, thank you for this lovely meeting, Andy and Rebecca. Thank you so much, and everyone in the conference. Well, joy for me is achieving. So when I give from my heart, and so the umbrella is connection. So when I connect on any level, so when I connect with my students in the university and someone says like, oh, you made me like and love this subject, I didn't like it before. When I connect with some client and she says, oh, you made me realize something I didn't notice before. So, you know, for me, these little things, achievements, daily achievements are very joyful for me.
And Bina, how about for you? What gives you joy? What brings you joy?
I'm going literally with the question which says, what brings you joy in this moment at this time? So for me, it's the sense of collaboration that allows each of us to amplify the positive and enabling energy that we are putting out. Because each of us has, on our own, can only do so much, but when we come together like this, we're amplifying that and touching so many lives, which, as you have just said, for me, anytime we touch others' lives in a way that helps them is reason for joy.
And Marilou, how about for you?
How long have you got?
8 minutes.
I think at the deepest level, what brings me joy is seeing other people grow and change and heal and make their way through the toughest times, because I know that when they're through the toughest times, what's waiting for them makes it all worth it. And my cats.
Excellent. Fantastic. Unless we've got any other questions.
And my husband, because he's upstairs, and you know that's pretty important for him too.
Yeah. Okay. We'll let Jerry come in as well on this one. Yeah. A couple of questions about logistical things. So yes, if you've registered for this, which you have because you're here, you will get a link to the video at the same time. We will send you through a tweaked PDF, which has sorted out the font issues that somebody mentioned about earlier. And you'll also get the handout, I think, from Gemma, and anything else that we need to package in on that same email as well. And yeah, thank you very much, everybody, for coming along. And unless we've got any other questions, I think that would be a fantastic place to pause from there. So remember, this was a free event brought to you by the NLP Conference. If you're not coming to the NLP Conference, check out nlpconference.com or stick yes, me please into the comments, and we'll make sure that you get some extra information sent through as well. For everybody else, I look forward to seeing you on the 20th to the 22nd of May for another fantastic event. Marilou's got a hand up, so I'm going to come back to her.
I want to thank you, Andy. I want to thank Cash and Karen and Rebecca and all of the stewards and all of the people from the ANLP organization, which is one of the most supportive and one of the deepest I'm almost wordless. The integrity and the love and the support that comes from ANLP is something that in this community and in the community of personal growth, you don't find it as much, because I mean, here we are, egoless and open to what's real. And please, if you are an NLP and you haven't joined this group, join it now, because thank you all for what you've done, and keep going.